Welcome and welcome back to my channel, Prufrock's Life and Library. This video is going to be the first episode of Philosophy with Prufrock. So let's begin. First episode of Philosophy with Prufrock, I would like to talk about one of my favorite philosophers, Albert Camus. And before I begin, I would just like to give the disclaimer that this is not going to be a teachy and a preachy video. I am not here to teach philosophy or to take a philosophy class. I've never studied philosophy academically. It just happens to be one of the subjects that has inclined me, pulled towards me the most. And most of it has, although I won't say that academia does not have a role to play here. I've studied literature for 5 years during my graduation and post-graduation. And studying literature was my gateway to philosophy. Because we read a lot about philosophers in order to understand because most philosophers have been playwrights or novelists and so on. So that is how I entered into this real big domain of mysterious thinking called philosophy, and that is how I got interested. So what I'm going to do in this series is pick out philosophers, talk about what their main subject area has been, and the things that I have found interesting, that has kept me rooted to philosophy, reading philosophy. And also the other thing, that important thing that needs to be stated first, is that most of my reading has been in and around Western philosophy. So that is the area that I'm going to dig in. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So for the first episode, I chose Camus because Camus happens to be a personality one can never ignore. So if you are not aware with Albert Camus, let me first state some facts. So he's a French philosopher. He was a French philosopher, and he was a journalist, he was an author, he was a playwright and a philosopher, obviously. He's also the recipient of Nobel Prize in Literature. I think he won it around at the age of 44. And that makes him the second youngest person to receive the award. And these two books, The Myth of Sisyphus, this is by Penguin, and this is also by Penguin Modern Classics, The Rebel. These two happens to be the two milestones of Albert Camus. There are other books like The Outsider, The Fall, and so on. So in this video, what I'm going to talk about is Myth of Sisyphus. I mean, the priority of this video is Myth of Sisyphus and the concepts that are explained in this book. Now, before I begin this book, I would like to read a quote from this book, which I think would be one of the most appropriate beginnings of this book. And it states, in order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasions. Now, the main aspects that I'm going to deal here, that the book deals here, is about the absurd and suicide. So the absurd, we often generally say, oh, this does not make, it is not making sense, so this is absurd. But what is the absurd actually? This book is Camus' attempt to explain the absurd in the context of life. We have generally spoken about absurd in little contextual situations, and the situation that Camus has taken up in this book is life in general, and he explains the absurd in according. The focus of this book is also, like I said, very much on suicide, and it's in the initial pages of the book that Camus has written. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. So according to him, suicide is an entirely philosophical problem, And I'm saying this by juxtaposing these two books, that his idea of suicide is very different. Now, there are obviously situations that leads to suicide, as in the literal sense, the meaning that we draw from it. But Camus' effort has been to explain the philosophical suicide. That is, now we'll get into that later. Now, the first problem is the search, the desire to find the meaning for life. Now, if you are anything bookish or non-bookish, I don't know what to say here, you might have heard of the quote of Hamlet by Shakespeare, to be or not to be. So that is that perhaps I think is the best context to be put in here, because life, as in like our existence, the being of ourselves is very fragile, and it is dependent on the meaning that we draw out of our existence. So to be or not to be, that is the question. Now, as we are living life according to Camus, the one must ask the question that what are the reasons to continue living? So one fine day I might wake up and start asking, what are my reasons to live? Why am I living? Why should I continue? And ironically, for that Camus has an answer, or perhaps it is another question, and he writes, what is called a reason for living is also an excellent reason for dying. So you might find a lot of paradoxical notions in this, in Camus' viewpoints, and that is actually the point he's trying to make. So the desire to live, the reasons to live is also the reasons to die. Now, the fun fact, the main paradox of Camus' writing is that his idea states that there is a desire for meaning, or there is a longing for knowing the meaning of life, to know the reasons, to excavate the reasons that one is living for, and in response there is a zero silence that we are receiving from the universe. So this extreme desire and longing for knowing the meaning of the world, the life, and finding reasons to live on, and on the other hand there is this zero silence, there is just no response that universe is giving to us. This is the idea that Camus has stated in this book, and he says that in order to find the meaning of our existence, one has to face or bring out the relationship between these two, this longing and this desire for life, and this zero response from the universe. Now, this relationship is not a very normal relationship, as you might know, because one is not responding. So how this relationship is created? It is created through absence. Now, there is an absence of relationship between the two. There's the desire and the response from the universe. This absent relationship makes it the relationship, perhaps. There's a sense of nothing, and I state it in quotes, there is a sense of nothing in this relationship. Nothing, Camus has written in this book, this nothing is the only factor that empowers that relationship. Perhaps there is this absence creates a crisis, and crisis brings forth the struggle to know, that the desire, the strengthening of this desire to know more. Because there is no response or a zero response, the desire strengthens up. This is a famous quote, and it also happens to be one of my favorite quote from this book. And also I feel that Camus has done a lot of explanation about life with reference to how an actor feels in his setting. This perhaps because he was also a playwright. Okay, and so he writes, it happens that the stage sets collapse. Rising, tram, 4 hours in the office or factory, meal, tram, 4 hours of work, meal, sleep, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. According to the same rhythm, This path is easily followed most of the time. But one day, the why arises and everything begins, that weariness tinged with amazement. So, this why that Camus has said is the point that will either lead to a definitive awakening within ourselves, the consciousness, the awakening of the consciousness, or it might also lead you to a philosophical suicide. Now, what happens? Why is this point so important? One might be living a simple life, simple or a complex life, whatever it is. One is just living a life, and one day you tend to ask yourself, why am I even doing this? Why is my life like this, in a certain rhythm, in a certain pattern? This 1, 2, 3, 4, and why? Why is 1 after 2 and after 3? 2 is before 3. So you just tend to question the pattern that is so conventional, that is so familiar to oneself. And Camus writes that this point of why will either lead to your awakening of the definitive awakening of your consciousness, or one might be philosophically making a suicide. Now, how one goes for a philosophical suicide is that you realize the why of your life and you choose to reject it. You become conscious about your life and you choose to ignore it. Know that this is my Monday, Tuesday comes after Monday, Wednesday comes after Tuesday. This is my desire to live. This is my reason to live, or anything else, perhaps any other XYZ reasons you might find out to live, and you try hard for yourself to make sense of the universe, to make sense of your life. That is what Camus says is a philosophical suicide. While on the other hand is the awakening, where one chooses to act on their awakening. I think it is the perfect quote to explain the philosophical suicide that Camus has tried to explain, and it states, a man wants to earn money in order to be happy, and his whole effort and the best of a life are devoted to the earning of that money. Happiness is forgotten, the means are taken for the end. Now, what I have tried to find a proper explanation for this quote is that it's perhaps someone's desire is to earn money and to own a house. Suppose I am working a lot, and the entire motive of my existence is towards earning more and more money, and then I make a house for myself. So my entire being, all of myself, I give to the reasons that makes me earn that money to buy the house. Now, in the process, I am not aware of any single thing, happiness, sadness, all of other emotions, and I get to buy the house. Now the ultimate truth is I die. So death is an undeniable truth, and then that house ceases to be my house. It will just be a house. The relation between the house and my being is completely lost after my death. So this is also, I would like to say that this is I'm not trying to be a pessimist here. This is how Albert Camus has explained what the absurd is, and these are just my take on explaining Camus. If you are feeling that I'm getting too pessimistic, I'm sorry, I apologize, but this is just my way of explaining Camus and how I have perceived Camus to be. Okay, so that is how the philosophical suicide works. And after one gets the definitive awakening, you can choose to revolt. Now, about revolt and rebel, this book is also another explanation of how the revolt or the rebellion works. Now the revolt or the rebellion that Camus has argued in both of these books is the most interesting point. So Camus himself has asked the question that if nothing is worth preserving, then what is actually the point of awakening? What makes this awakening after the triggering point of why a wise choice than the philosophical suicide? Now, on that note, Camus has argued that to rebel is an act or a notion that should not rely on just the self-interest but the greater good. Also, I think I missed a point. This absurdity that Camus has tried to explain has almost a similar. This why that Camus explains is not a great event. It's not a big incident that, oh, one day I wake up and I'm beginning to think that what is how to break the rhythm, why is the rhythm the same, working in the same way. No, it is not that. And if you're familiar with Soren Kierkegaard's work, his notion of anxiety and despair, I feel that Camus' way of beginning the absurdity and how the absurdity enters into our life in a form of this definitive awakening is similar to Kierkegaard's anxiety and despair. It just arises out of nowhere. You would be triggered by that, but there wouldn't be an incident that triggers you. So this is the point of the why. And so now the what is the point of the absurd? Why should one choose to be revolting or rebelling against the search for the meaning? So the title of this book is The Myth of Sisyphus, and the myth of Sisyphus actually does most of the explanation. Now this title is taken from the story of Sisyphus, who was given the task to roll a stone in the mountain, and despite of knowing that the stone is going to roll off from the mountain, he is trying to push it upwards, to take it to the top. Despite of knowing that the stone will never make it to the top of the mountain, he keeps on rolling it. And that is Camus' actual take on how life should be dealt with. So that is why the myth of Sisyphus. And Camus says, according to his perception, the absurd that he states must be something that has to be preserved but should not be agreed to, just how Sisyphus is doing it. He is not rejecting the fact that he can take the stone up to the top of the mountain, but he's just preserving the idea that he can do it. And the impossibility of the task. Now Camus' idea of absurd, that and with all the paradoxes within it, and the story of Sisyphus reminds me of the romantic writer William Blake, and his quote, if I'm not wrong, that it says, without contradiction there is no progression. So that, I think that is the idea Camus' work also brings to us, that the absurd has to be preserved because there is a crisis in it, there is a contradiction, there is a conflict, which in turn acts as a drive for us to find meaning or try to search for the meaning of life. And that is what acts as a fuel to our life. So that is why one must preserve the absurd but should not agree to the absurd. That is all for today. Please let me know in the comments if you liked this video and if I should be making more of these, because philosophy has been a subject that has kept me rooted to reading, and I enjoy reading all of these little theories and these situations, knowing about what ideas and concepts these philosophers have brought and I try to find this. Perhaps this is my way of finding meaning for life. So Camus has been a great influence in my little acts of rebellion, and I know all of us are rebelling against all odds, trying to find a meaning for what they are doing. So if you have not read Camus, I hope you do, because perhaps at a point of time you might feel that he is very pessimistic, his philosophy is very pessimistic, but there is a greater optimism, and you realize that there are the little contradictions and the conflicts are the reasons that why you choose to fight over situations, over difficult situations again and again. And we are all Sisyphuses in our own lives. So I hope you have enjoyed this. Please let me know in the comments that so that it motivates me to make such videos on philosophy. And till then, thank you and bye bye. Till see you in the next video.